flow of fentanyl. Senator Kennedy.
Dr. Farfan, the president of Mexico until 2024 was President Lopez Obrador. Is that right? And he ran for president with respect to the cartels on the slogan, hugs, not bullets. Is that right?
Well, no, he did not run on his campaign
Yes, he
with that
did.
slogan.
Yes, he did. Now, his hand-picked successor is President Steinbaum. Is that correct?
Sheinbaum,
Is that correct?
Gloria Sheinbaum,
Right. Am I right?
yes.
Okay. I love the people of Mexico, and the people of Mexico are good friends. But isn't a big part of the problem that President Lopez Obrador and now President Sheinbaum, thank you for correcting me, by the way, live in the right front pocket of the Mexican drug cartels?
I disagree with that statement.
I thought you might. You want more task forces. Dr. Westlake, this represents 400 grams of fentanyl. Kill every person in Providence, Rhode Island. If you're a dealer and you get caught with this, you get 10 years minimum. This represents 40 grams of fentanyl. Would kill every single man, woman, and child in Culpeper, Virginia. If you get caught with this amount, as a dealer, you get a 5-year minimum sentence. This is where it gets special. This represents 10 grams of PCP. If you get caught with it, as a dealer, you get 5 years minimum. Is fentanyl more dangerous than PCP?
Yeah, absolutely, Senator. The fentanyl is classified, can be classified as a lethal weapon. I did a chart on it. And
This is 5 grams of meth. That's what this represents. If you're a dealer and you get caught with it, your minimum sentence is 5 years. Is fentanyl, you get caught with this much fentanyl, 5 years or 10 years. Get caught with this much fentanyl, 5 years. Get caught with this much meth, you can hardly see it, you get 5 years. Does that make any sense to you?
No, sir.
It's like cell deep stupid, isn't it? You don't need a task force to see the logic of that. I've got a bill, it's called the Fairness in Fentanyl Sentencing, I've reintroduced. This bill will lower the 5-year mandatory minimum for 40 grams of fentanyl to 2 grams of fentanyl. It'll lower the 10-year mandatory minimum from 400 grams of fentanyl to 20 grams of fentanyl. This bill won't punish addicts. It'll help. It's not going to help until President Lopez Obrador and President Sheinbaum get out of the pockets of the drug cartels. But it's a start. This bill will punish dealers. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Senator Whitehouse.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome to all.
Senator Warner is a reasonable man. Everybody on this committee knows that. And he's a good man. And I understand he's interested in process, and I'm not saying that process isn't important. But if the United States of America has been taking taxpayer money and using it to produce a transgender opera in Colombia, then I want to know about it. And I'm glad to know about it. And it seems to me that that's the main issue with respect to all of this. And I look forward to talking further with my friend, Mr. Warner, about that. I mean, for 4 years under President Biden, as was his right, the topic of discussion in Washington was who needs to pay more in taxes? Who needs to pay more in taxes? That's no longer the main question. The main question is now, as it should be in my judgment, what the hell happened to all the money? And we're going to find out. Now, I need to get back to the subject. With the exception of Mr. Klein, whose testimony I enjoyed, I understand his position. He wants to let the CFPB run America's banks. And I appreciate that perspective, but Mr. Klein, it's not going to happen in your natural lifetime or mine. Now, let me turn to the other gentleman. What I hear Mr. McCauley, Mr. Ring, and Mr. Gannon saying is that some of America's banks have been discriminating, debanking customers because of their religious beliefs, because they support the Second Amendment, or because they hate fossil fuels. I don't want to go with all three of you. I'll run out of time. Mr. Ring, is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Which banks?
Well, I think it's been publicly reported that Bank of America has certainly picked and choose winners.
Who else?
I think Chase Bank has.
Who else?
I think Citibank has.
Who else?
I think KeyBank has.
Who else?
I'm going to probably run out of names pretty soon, but I think the mega banks are. Old Glory Bank is not, of course. We
Well, then
love
we
the
need
Second
to-
Amendment and fossil fuels.
We need to get those banks in here, Mr. Chairman. We need to get all those CEOs in here.
I would agree.
Now, why? I appreciate your candor. Why do you think, are banks doing this because they're scared of the regulators? Or are they doing this because the people running the banks are prosecuting their political beliefs?
I
mean, when a bank holds a seminar, taking up valuable employee time to discuss whether a man can breastfeed, are they doing that because regulators are leaning on them? Or are they doing that because the CEO really thinks that's subject to debate?
I think it's definitely the latter, and I think it's also middle management.
What do you mean the latter?
It is not the regulators. I do not believe the regulators pushed the big banks to debank conservative
You
causes. I do not. I think it was their internal choice by these big banks.
Why?
Well, why? The same reason why big tech pick and choose winners. I think big banks pick and choose winners that they care about, and that's why we need a market solution, because you can't regulate that type of behavior without having unintended consequences. And now every time you get a customer application, you've got to fill out 5 forms as to why you did or did not pick that customer.
So you think that that's the management of these banks that are just imposing their own politics on customers and ultimately to the detriment of shareholders? Is that your testimony?
Yes, sir.
Either you two gentlemen in my last 10 seconds disagree with that?
I strongly disagree, Senator. Yes, I've Spent a lot of time with a number of bank CEOs.
Who do you think it is?
I believe it's the regulators.
How about you, sir?
It's definitely regulators. All the big banks wanted to work with crypto and were scared away from it by the regulatory apparatus.
All right, I'm out of time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank all of you for your testimony. Mr. Ring, you work hard to protect your customers' sensitive personal information, do you not?
Yes, sir.
And you wouldn't just turn it over to anybody who walked into your bank, would you?
No.
And Mr. McCauley, I assume the same is true for you?
I believe I'm next. Representative, I'm sorry, but your boy's proud of you. You're doing good work.
Thank you.
You know, my late father used to tell me that you'll never know love till you know the love of a child, and I didn't believe him, but I do now. I don't know what I'd do if something happened to my boy. I'm just so sorry.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Pizzurro,
Sir.
social media is now a big part of childhood, isn't it?
Yes.
Can we agree that big parts of social media have just become cesspools of snark?
I can probably attest to that, yes.
Can we agree that social media has lowered the cost of being an a-hole?
Yeah.
Can we agree that big parts of social media have become cesspools of sexual exploitation?
For sure.
And I assume you'd agree with me if I said that social media has lowered the cost of being a pedophile, hasn't it?
Absolutely. It made it easy access.
Yeah. You're familiar with the National Center for Missing Exploited Children's cyber tip line?
Yes.
Are the social media companies required to report instances of child sexual exploitation to the National Center?
Of what they see.
Okay. So the law says the social media companies have got to report these instances of sexual exploitation to the National Center. First, they have to look, don't they?
Yes.
Do they make any money when they look?
No, if you just look at the Apple statistics I gave before, out of 36 million, there's 275 came from Apple.
But
so.
they're not paid to look.
No.
Okay. In fact, they want people coming to their social media platform.
More users, more money.
Yeah. They want eyeballs so they can sell them advertising. So for them to look is inconsistent with their economic interest, isn't it?
Correct.
All right. Now, once they look and they find it, then they have to report it to the National Center. Is that right?
That's correct.
Are they paid to report it to the National Center?
Absolutely not.
Okay. How many instances, I know this is a difficult question, how many instances do you think are of sexual exploitation of children are occurring and not being either looked for and or reported by the social media companies?
Well, I don't have NCMEC statistics, but I could tell you that there's a lot of ESPs that don't actually even report. So some over-report, some don't report at all. So that's part of the challenge. And then secondary, it's voluntary, right? So whatever they give them, there's no uniformity in data as well.
Yeah, what happens if they don't look and they don't report? Are they punished?
No.
Okay. You're familiar with the SAFER program?
A little bit.
Okay, it's a tool. They use AI to scan conversations and look for patterns that might be sexual exploitation of children. It's not the only algorithm out there. Do social media programs all use that?
I don't know how many do, but I don't know if they're using technology, but they should.
Are they required to use it?
Nope.
We've got to do something. This is my last question. Do you find it ironic that all of these people in big tech who dreamed about and talked about creating a utopia have managed to generate more hate and more harm than anyone could ever have possibly imagined, all to make money?
And lots of money they made.
You find that ironic?
Very.
Thank you all for being here. Senator Blumenthal, he's not only next, he's the only one left. But it's nice to see him.
Am I recognized, Mr. Chairman? Mr. Ranking Member, or you?
Society perspective. How do we do this as a society to actually eradicate anti-Semitism? And I think that is the larger question, rather than isolated on the FBI.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Kennedy.
Thank you all for being here. Ms. Solomon, I want to be sure I understand your testimony. Did I understand you to testify that anti-Semitism is worse under the Trump administration?
Senator, thank you for your question.
You don't have to thank me. Okay. Your best thanks is to answer.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you that anti-Semitism has been rising, especially since the 2017
but has the Trump
Charlottesville
administration caused that? Is that your testimony?
I wouldn't say the Trump administration has caused anti-Semitism. Has there been an increase since Trump has entered office? Yes.
Do you see a causal connection there?
Yes.
Why?
Trump has highlighted and platformed neo-Nazis and white supremacists.
Okay. Mr. I can't see that far.
Racklin.
Mr. Racklin, I understood you to say that in answer to Senator Durbin's question, the spending reductions, reducing the federal budget would increase anti-Semitism. Isn't that what you said?
No, I did not. I said that the constant threats to cut money to the Office for Civil Rights and the Department of Education prevents the federal government from adequately investigating anti-Semitism and other hate crimes on college campuses.
So you think one way to stop anti-Semitism is to give people more money? Is that
I
right?
think one of the ways is to actually fund people that are actually designed to investigate anti-Semitism on college campuses.
What's there to investigate? We see it.
We saw
it. Did you watch television? Did you see what happened at Columbia?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, it was clear to me that the administration at Columbia and most members of the faculty believed passionately in diversity, equity, inclusion, and the right to hurt Jews. That's what I saw. Isn't that what you saw?
I saw.
Isn't that what you saw?
I saw protesters against the war in Gaza and them using some anti-Semitic slogans and thoughts. I would say, however, that it's hard. I would say,
isn't that
however,
what you're telling me?
that
that's not what you saw. No, don't get off the subject on me now. You're telling me that's not what you saw.
I'm telling you that it is difficult for the federal government to adequately address the issue of anti-Semitism.
Are you telling me the Columbia administration and the faculty was supportive of the Jewish community?
I think that they are trying to find...
You need to stop dipping into your ketamine stash.
Into what? Excuse me?
Now, if we're going to solve this problem, we need to talk about it. And it wasn't just at Columbia. It was at Berkeley. It was at UCLA. It was at Barnard. And Columbia has a history of discriminating against Jewish people. They used to refuse to let Jewish students come to their university. Now, you can try to bubble wrap this, but that's what I saw. If you want to stop a lot of the anti-Semitism, maybe we need to stop teaching kids to be anti-Semitic.
Sir, I would relish that opportunity.
Let me ask you a question, Ms. Kohab. Did I say that right?
Kohab.
Do you think it's possible to feel compassion for the Palestinian people without hating Jews?
Absolutely.
Would you elaborate on that? Because it looks to me like many of our Ivy League universities, they weren't the only ones. Some universities handled it well. Vanderbilt, University of Chicago, Tulane. But it looks like the administration was teaching kids you got to pick a side. Mm-hmm. You either have to hate Jews or you have to be for Hamas. You can't be. There's no middle ground. Tell me what you saw. You've written a book about it. Maybe Mr. Rockland ought to read it.
Just because we are testifying, I wrote a chapter in the anthology Young Zionist Voices about what's happening on college campuses, and my book is coming soon, so look out for that.
Good plug, but
so let me answer your question.
Can you feel compassion for the Palestinian people and not hate Jews?
Absolutely. I think that what I've seen on college campuses is a pushing of a Marxist framing of the way that you see the world. And this is not only in liberal studies departments. I've taken dance classes, I've taken creative writing classes, where your final project is literally called The Political is Personal. And what they're teaching you on college campuses is that the political is personal and that everything should be personalized. And there's a global north, a global south, a global right, and a global wrong. And the issue with college campuses and what's happening right now in the United States is that we're allowing ideology to drive violence. A society that says that you can commit violent acts based on your ideology because your ideology is correct is a society that's eroding, and that's what I see on college campuses. Now, you asked if I could feel Palestinian peoplehood, right? If I could feel compassion for the Palestinian people. Absolutely. And every night when I go to bed, yes, I pray for the Jewish people, but I also pray for the Palestinian people, for God to send them leaders that actually care more about their safety, leaders that put their people's safety in order to propel an ideology at risk aren't leaders. If you look at Hamas, they tout what happened after October 7th up until this day as a victory. How can you lie in rubble after thousands of your people have died and call that a victory? So what I see that has to happen on college campuses is de-radicalization. Until you admit that there's a radical ideology happening on a college campus, you cannot fight it. You cannot fight it.
Senator Ronald, hey, I know there's a lot of strong feelings in here. We all have them, but each member only has 5 minutes, and it just takes time away from their 5 minutes if you really want to get all these facts out. Ms. Hirano.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize for having to miss the testimony of some of you, and I appreciate you coming today. Professor Franks, let me ask you, I listened to your and Ms. Hemingway's testimony and Professor Turley, so I got part of it. As I understand it, your position, Professor Franks, is that, I think you used the word myth. It is a myth that the Biden administration used government to compel speech, private speech, but that the Trump administration is doing that. Is that a fair characterization?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Do you think perhaps you're allowing your personal political beliefs to affect your objectivity here?
No, I do not. What is guiding my answers here is that I'm looking to see what the Supreme Court has said. You notice that in the testimony about the censorship industrial complex.
I got that part.
No, I just
want
to
that
clarify.
part. No, but I've only got 5 minutes. Your answer is no, as I appreciate it. Let me ask you a couple questions. You wrote a law review article in December of 2023 for the New York University Law Review, and it was about the two cases, Bruin, Supreme Court case, and Dobbs. Remember that article?
Yes, I do.
Okay. In this article, you said, I'm going to quote your words, taken together, these two cases demonstrate that the Supreme Court has embraced the use of the Constitution as a tool of racial patriarchy, end quote. Did you say that?
Yes.
Okay. And then you went on to say, quote, when the Supreme Court declares that there is a constitutional right to armed self-defense in public, it openly embraces and promotes a culture that privileges white men's ability to terrorize and kill those that they perceive as threats, close quote. Did I read that correctly?
I believe so. Thank you for reading.
Okay. And did you also say in that article, I'm going to quote again, quote, by simultaneously expanding white men's right to kill and constricting women's right not to die, this Supreme Court, referring to the current United States Supreme Court, has turned the Constitution into a homicide pact as well, close quote. Did you write that?
That sounds like me.
Okay. In November of 2024, you tweet, don't you?
I'm not sure what the current terminology is for it, but yes, I am sometimes on the social platform that was formerly known as Twitter.
Yeah, you're on a lot, aren't you?
I'm not sure what the relevance of that is.
You try to be provocative on there, don't you?
Again, I'm not sure what the relevance
Well,
of this question
let me
is.
show you the relevance. On November 7th, 2024, from your tweet, here's one of your tweets at 2:41 p.m., quote, the majority of Americans hate women. The majority of Americans hate women more than they love anything, including democracy, close quote. Did I read that correctly?
I am not sure what this has to do with the subject matter of this
Did you
hearing.
say it?
I do not have those words in front of me. I probably said something along those lines, but
Yeah,
what is
you
the
said it.
relevance of
Here
that
it
to
is,
this
big as
hearing?
Dallas, right there.
Yes.
But your political beliefs don't impact your feelings about President Biden or President Trump.
I don't have feelings about either of them. What I have
Sounds
is
to me
doctrine.
like your favorite feeling is anger. Let me ask you this. You issued another tweet. This was in May of 2022. You've just been tweeting up a storm. You said, quote, there's a reason why the conservative-dominated Supreme Court thinks the Constitution does not contain a right to an abortion, but is convinced that it contains an individual right to possess firearms. And that reason is white male supremacy, close quote. Did I read that correctly?
Is there a question in this?
Did I read that correctly? That's
Is there
my
a question that is relevant to this hearing?
Did I read that correctly? Do you really think that the United States Supreme Court, you're an officer of the court, is guided by white male supremacy?
I believe that the First Amendment prohibits the president
Did you
other
say
state
that?
officials for punishing people for
Did
their
you honestly say that, Professor?
I
And you
believe
expect us,
that the First
as a
Amendment,
Democratic witness, to take you seriously? Are you kidding me?
I believe that you should take
You
the First
heard of
Amendment
curb your
seriously, sir.
enthusiasm? Here's my saying, curb my nausea.
I believe that you should take the First
Time has
Amendment
expired. Thank
seriously.
you. Senator Durbin.
Senator Kennedy, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you all for being here. Professor Glazer, you're head of the Department of Economics at Harvard? No longer. But you've taught there since 1992. Correct.
I think you need to turn your microphone on.
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
You did your PhD work at Chicago?
That's correct, sir.
Great school. You publish about 5 articles a year?
I don't know. I've published a few.
I appreciate your testimony because you not only talked about the problem, but you talked about possible solutions. No disrespect to anybody, but you know, revamping our appraisal process or title insurance or talking about power imbalances is not going to get homes built, not in a free enterprise country. Our problem is supply, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
And the main reason we have a problem with supply is because of land use regulation, isn't it?
I've been saying that for 25 years, Senator. Yes, I agree with that very strongly.
And land use, zoning, some would call it, is within the job description of, to some extent, state, but mostly local government. Is that right?
That's correct, sir.
And Congress has a history, it seems to me, you can disagree, certainly if you do, of just throwing money at the problem and trying to tell local government how to get more houses built. And local government takes the money and pushes back because politicians at the local level, they like to eat and live indoors too, and they like to get reelected, and they don't want to make anybody upset by changing land use regulation in a way to encourage more housing. Would that be a fair assessment? My words, though, not yours.
I will not disagree with any of those words, Senator. Okay.
There's a plan that's been talked about in Canada. And what the Canadians have, they're talking about it. It hasn't been implemented, but the proponent of the plan, I've talked with Senator Warren about this, has said, look, we need to incent local government to increase housing starts, but we need to use a carrot and a stick. What if America had a law, Congress passed a statute that said, look, we don't care how you do it, states, but you need to increase your housing starts by 3, 4, 5% a year. Do it however you want to do it. If you do that, we will give you extra federal money. If you don't do that, we will take federal money away from you until you start doing it. Would that work?
If you're willing to champion such legislation, Senator, I'm willing to be behind you. I think there are challenges with that in the U.S. The difficulties of taking away spending that was already expected may be particularly hard. It may be easier to do with discretionary grants than with spending that's targeted. I also think it needs to be targeted not to the state's level of production, but to production in the most productive parts of the state. Right? We don't want California to meet its requirements by building in areas that are very far away from Los Angeles or San Francisco, and and so forth. But I think basically something that creates carrots and ideally sticks as well, that tries to encourage states to do the right thing. And from my perspective, the battleground of affordable housing is in places like the California state legislature. And I would love those legislators who want to do the right thing, who want to make California a state for outsiders, to be able to say, look, the federal government is pushing us in this direction too. Can we just not lose our spending for X? Can we do this? And I think that would be very powerful in the hands of the state.
Who would be best to decide the most productive areas to incent housing?
I would use Bureau of Economic Analysis numbers of output per capita. I don't think it's, but this can be debated. We can, lots of people. I would not hand it over to an agency, though. I would put it directly in the legislation.
Do you think our problem in America with housing is caused by a power imbalance?
I'm not sure I know what that means.
Me
Senator.
neither. Me neither. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thanks, sir.
Morning. And now the senator from Missouri, so we'll go to Senator Kennedy.
Let me start over. My mic was off. Thank you all for being here. I listened to all of you with great interest. Professor, do you believe that people respond to incentives?
Thank you, Senator. I do believe that people respond to incentives.
Do you believe that what you allow is what will continue?
I suppose I do.
Okay. I listened to all of you talk about enhancing affirmative disclosure requirements, strengthening the presumption of disclosure. I listened to you talk about consultants. I listened to you talking about the need for a public interest balancing test. But those can be ignored just as easily as every other part of the statute. Why don't you just create personal liability for the person responsible for turning over the documents?
Certainly, Senator. There are systems, other jurisdictions around the world that do have, in fact, personal penalties for government officials.
Do you recommend it for us?
I don't think that we're at the point where we necessarily have to take such a step in order to drastically change the incentives that agencies.
Why not? I mean, all administrations stall and restall in turning over documents to the American people, don't they? Does anybody disagree with that? It's not a Democrat thing or a Republican thing. It's an executive branch thing, isn't it?
It absolutely is. I do not disagree with that. It is.
So why don't we hold the people responsible, personally responsible? I'm not saying not afford them due process. You may want to require bad faith with a reasonable, not an impossible definition of bad faith. I mean, if you want to solve this problem, why don't you just create personal liability, Mr. Howell?
I think that's a terrific idea. Right now, the mechanism to have liability is basically an attorney's fees, and those are rarely given out. So the government really is never forced to pony up.
Well, the employees don't care if the government gets hit with attorney's fees, do they?
Correct. And that's why the Department of Justice is willing to tolerate us suing them 100 times, because we all pay for their lawyers.
Look, we can write and rewrite statutes all we want to. But it is clear that people in the government are not responding to Freedom of Information Act requests in bad faith. Sometimes they need more time, but I'm talking about in bad faith. That's clear. And it happens on both sides. So instead of just rewriting new laws and new rules that they're going to ignore, why don't you just hold people personally responsible? What about it, Doctor?
I actually fully agree, and I would point out that there's a mechanism in the FOIA statute currently where if it turns out that there's evidence of an agency or an agency employee intentionally withholding documents without a reasonable basis, a judge could, in issuing that order, make that finding.
And when's the last time that happened?
Almost never.
Yeah, it hasn't happened in the history of ever, has it?
Yeah,
no.
Yeah,
and until Congress makes it very clear that we're serious about this, we're going to be equal opportunity pit bulls here and say, regardless of who is running the executive branch, you have an affirmative obligation to turn over documents. And if you don't do it, you're going to be personally liable. That's going to work, isn't it?
Well, I would hope so. Of course, as you know, as a former law professor, there are issues with, the executive branch claiming immunity for these employees.
I'm not saying deny them due process.
Right.
I'm not saying an ordinary negligence standard. I am saying that if some person is being an obstructionist and you can prove it, they ought to be held personally liable. We wouldn't have to do it for long.
Senator Whitehouse.
I still had 9 seconds left.
Proceed.
No, I yield my back. But I do want to say Professor Whitehouse has some interesting thoughts about enforcing orders that he and I have talked about. So I'm going to listen to him carefully here.
Senator Whitehouse.
Senator Kennedy has predicted my line of questioning. I know that we're here to talk about FOIA, but at least in theory, congressional.
Senator Kennedy.
Dr. Parikh, am I saying that right?
You are.
Thank you. Do you know anybody who's against biomedical research?
I do not know anybody that's against biomedical research, but I know some.
That's like being against children, isn't it?
It is.
It's like being against world peace, isn't it?
It is.
It's like being against golden retrievers, isn't it?
There's some people that argue there.
Okay. Well, let's get that out of the way. I want to ask you about NIH. I love NIH. I think they do extraordinary work.
Yes, sir.
But isn't it a fact if NIH assigns way too much money for overhead, that money comes out of the basic research? Isn't that the case?
Senator, both those things are providing funds for research. And I agree with you that we need to make the administrative burden and the costs associated with it as low as possible, because we do want as much to go
Well,
to
why
research.
can't NIH live with 15% overhead?
Yeah. Senator, we have had a partnership that's been going on for 75 years in this country.
Yes,
that's
sir,
worked
but why
remarkably
can't NIH live with 15% overhead?
At this point, what that would do is actually turn institutions like the ones we've heard about here, it would actually make it to where they are laying off researchers and the support folks who are
Well, the
supporting
Gates
that work.
Foundation, when they make grants, they limit overhead to 10%, don't they?
They do, sir, but that is apples to oranges because they count different things
And the
than
Roberts
overhead.
Woods Johnson Foundation limits overhead to 12%, don't they?
They do. Again, apples to oranges because they count different things.
Isn't it a fact that the universities that receive the most money from NIH also have the biggest endowments?
I haven't checked that, but it probably is true, Senator. And I agree with you. There are challenges that we need to work on.
Well, let's take Harvard. 69 cents out of every dollar from NIH given to Harvard goes to overhead.
No, sir, it's 69 cents out of every $1.69. It's on top of, it's not within.
Okay. Let me ask you about one of the worst abuses I've ever seen. It was at Stanford.
Yes, sir.
Stanford was spending 74% of grants from NIH on overhead. Remember that?
I do, although I was in high school at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't. and they audited Stanford.
Yes, sir.
You remember what they found?
They bought a sailboat.
They found that Stanford was spending some of that money to pay the salaries of the employees at a Stanford-owned shopping center, didn't they?
I don't remember that part. No,
I do.
But yeah, okay.
They found that Stanford was spending some of that money that was supposed to go to research, ladies and gentlemen, to renovate the president's home.
Yes, sir.
Didn't they?
I believe so, Senator. Again.
And to renovate the vice provost's home, too, didn't they?
I believe you when you say that. Yes.
And they also charged, Stanford took NIH research money to help children and applied it to depreciation on a Stanford yacht, didn't they?
Yes, sir. Again, when I was in high school, sir.
Now, does NIH audit every year the way these grants are being spent?
They don't audit every year. There's a process for
So they
determining.
just trust the universities?
No, there's a negotiation that takes place between
Yes,
the
sir,
NIH
but if it's a
and the
five-year grant
Yes, sir.
and they agree on indirect costs, they don't audit it every year. What if the universities lie to them?
That is absolutely a possibility.
What does fungible mean?
Fungible means that you can move money from one place to another.
And money's fungible, isn't it?
Money is fungible.
I'm ready to have a productive discussion. I've got to go to another committee. Maybe you'll have it today. I haven't heard it.
Yes, sir.
What I've heard is the implication is that anybody who is against asking hard questions about the overhead and spending is against biomedical research.
I wouldn't say that, sir. I think you are a champion.
And I don't agree with that.
Yeah, I don't either.
But every penny that we spend on overhead that's not being audited, and you know as much as I do, Doc, that some of it is being abused, is money that is taken away from research. And that's just a fact.
Senator,
And if you care about this child here, and I know you do, we all do, then any money spent illegitimately on overhead to pay the salary of a professor in the humanities department at a university is coming out of her research. And it's not wrong to ask questions.
It is not wrong to ask
No,
questions.
it's not.
Not at all. And Senator, I think it's actually important to ask those questions and optimize the system.
And I don't understand why these universities cannot live on 15% overhead when Gates Foundation limits them to 10% and the Johnson Foundation limits them to 12%. I don't understand it. All of a sudden, if they don't get 35% overhead, civilization is going to melt.
It is important.
My mama didn't raise a fool, and if she did, it was one of my brothers. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize to each of you for missing your opening statements, but I was in another committee. I have 5 minutes, and I would like each of you to give me 30 seconds on why you think premiums have risen, and another 30 seconds each on what you think we should do about it. Mr. Gordon?
So the primary cost factors for rising homeowners insurance costs, it's primarily the demographic shifts of people moving into more climate riskier areas and building more expensive homes. 40-year record inflation is the next biggest component. And then the building material inflation has outpaced the underlying inflation. And then you add into that climate change and legal system abuse and regulatory costs. And that's why the natural disaster costs in homeowners insurance are going up. The best way to offset that is through more mitigation.
I'm sorry, it's through what?
More mitigation and resiliency, improved building codes, wildfire prepared standards, fortified building standards. When you look at, if you analyze Hurricane Ian, which was the second worst insured loss event in history, if that had hit Florida before all of Florida's building code reforms, it would have been closer to a Hurricane Katrina loss event. And so you see entire neighborhoods in Florida.
Excuse me for interrupting, but I want to make sure everybody has a chance. Mr. Epstein?
Sure. So, yeah, the basic failures that are causing premiums to rise. So the government has failed at climate resilience, which is the most important thing. So in the case where it's the government-controlled things like the forests in California, they've just totally failed to manage those properly. Sometimes they inhibit people from managing their own property. So that's part one, is failing at resilience. Part two is actively encouraging people to take on risk that they wouldn't take in a free market, which happens, encouraging people, like all these disaster relief things just end up subsidizing people taking more risk, and they create these cascading problems. So the solutions are simple. We want to get rid of all the green policies that inhibit resilience, and we want to totally free market and insurance so that people aren't encouraged to take on undue risk.
Thank you. Madam Supervisor?
So the changing climate has led to catastrophic disasters in my county and across California, as you know. What can be done is a continued investment in infrastructure, hardening homes and community, forest health, and fuel management programs.
Mr. Newman?
Thank you, Senator. I agree with Mr. Gordon on all of his reasons why property insurance price is increasing. Of those, risk is the only one a homeowner has any control over. And so disaster mitigation has to be part of the solution to drive down insurance costs. But not just any disaster mitigation, our risk reduction needs to be grounded in science and verified. It's those two features that provide the bridge from the actions of a homeowner to the insurance industries. What I can tell you is that when you do that, insurers will pay attention.
All right, let's go in.
Oh, that is awesome.
Let's go in reverse order. I think each of you mentioned mitigation. When I hear mitigation, I also hear money. Who do you think should pay for the mitigation, and how should we pay for it? Mr. Newman?
Senator, we all have an obligation to pay for mitigation. That falls on individuals, on homeowners and families. That falls on every level of government, and the private sector needs to pitch in as well.
Madam Supervisor?
I agree. This is all of our responsibility at the local level, all the way up to the federal level, because we know who has to come in and clean up after a catastrophic
So you think local should contribute?
I think everyone has a part to play.
You think local should contribute?
I think, yes.
Okay.
There is a part to play locally.
Mr. Epstein?
I mean, in general, as much as possible, the people taking on the risk, so as individual as possible. And you know, if the government does something very specifically disastrous, then maybe it owes damages, but yeah, you want risk to be as individual as possible.
Mr. Gordon?
So the single most cost-effective wildfire safety standard is just simply moving the dry brush and plants 5 feet away from your home to create a defensible perimeter. California actually required that in law, but never implemented that in regulation. So there are very cost-effective things that you can do, homeowners can do, communities can do if we guide them in the right direction.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
On behalf of the chairman, Senator Teacher.
Thank you, Senator Cohen. Senator Kennedy.
Professor Sood, as I understand it, 80% of the PBM market is controlled by 3 companies, 3 PBMs, that are vertically integrated. Is that right?
That is correct.
Does your research show that the prices that consumers pay are higher than they would be if those companies were not vertically integrated?
So my research on Medicare Part D...
Give me an answer.
Partially.
What do you mean partially? They're either higher or they're lower. There's no such thing as a partial price.
What I find is that Medicare Part D premiums are higher as a result of vertical integration.
Okay. Well, then why don't we, I'm all for transparency, Mr. Chairman, I want to say that. But why don't we skip the foreplay and go right to the sex and outlaw vertical integration for Part D? Would you accept an amendment to your bill like that?
I don't want to answer that question right now because I want to study that.
Would you support that, Mr. Scott? Let me just guess what your answer is.
No, sir, and I can explain why.
No, you speak Sanskrit. I mean, I'm sorry. You know, you're good at it, and I know your job is to protect the PBMs. And I might tell us I don't think PBMs are the only ones at fault, but you don't have unclean hands. Professor Sood, you say PBMs ought to be fiduciaries. To whom?
To both the plan and their members.
Well, what if the plan and the members' interests diverge? Who are they fiduciaries to?
Ultimately, in principle, they should be fiduciaries to the members.
Okay.
So, for example, ERISA makes...
I get it.
Okay.
I get it. Mr. Chairman, again, why don't we skip the foreplay and go right to the sex? Why don't we just amend your bill to require that PBMs have a fiduciary obligation to plan members?
Well, I think that's been suggested, and I think there's part of that in our legislation, but probably not fully enough to satisfy you.
Well,
so let me look at what you want to add to it.
Okay. I mean, I'm not criticizing your bill. I don't want my office to end up in Bethesda. So I'm not criticizing your bill. I like transparency. But we're just nibbling around the edges here. And with respect, Mr. Scott, your definition of a fiduciary is wrong. A fiduciary isn't somebody that controls the decision. You know that, and I know that. A fiduciary is somebody who has a legal obligation to give his client the best advice and to do what's best for his client. It doesn't replace agent with principal or vice versa. You know that, and I know that. Well, you need to talk to your lawyers. I may be wrong, but I doubt it. Let me go back to Professor Sood. Tell me 2 things you would do tomorrow to fix PBMs and result in lower prices for consumers?
So I think the two things I would do is...
Very specific.
Yes. I would implement price transparency so that everyone knows what they're paying. And
Okay, price transparency just tells us who's screwing them.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the fiduciary responsibility says, if you're getting screwed, I can take you to court. So I would do those two things. And those are, I think, better than banning particular practices, because otherwise it's whack-a-mole. You ban spread pricing and something else will show up a year from now.
I got 29 seconds. Do you have any other suggestions? I appreciate your
So
straight talk.
the other thing we can do is, what I recommended is pass-through of rebates to patients. So suppose a drug...
Say that again?
So pass-through of rebates to patients. So for example, the list price of a drug is $50,000. But the rebate on the drug is $40,000. So when a patient is paying cost sharing, suppose 10%, they should be paying on the post-rebate price, so which is the $50,000 less the $40,000 rebate. Right now, what's happening is patients are paying cost sharing on the $50,000. So this would immediately lower patient out-of-pocket costs. So as Dr. Kircher said, for the cancer patients.
So you're saying that, then I'm going to have to ask, the PBMs are jacking up, are encouraging manufacturers to jack up the list price so they can jack up their rebates.
And that
is that right?
Yes.
That's illegal.
And the jacked up.
That's illegal.
Yes. I don't know about that, but it.
I do.
Okay.
It's illegal as hell.
Yeah.
Before I call on Senator Ronald, want to remind my members we got to vote and they're enforcing the 30-minute rule. So I'm willing
the ports of entry, but that's not your experience, is it?
No, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Kennedy?
The bad guys are using drones. Does anybody disagree with that? Okay. And the federal government has the authority to fight back, does it not? But nobody disagrees with that statement? Sure, Professor.
I would say within limits, yes. Within constitutional limits.
Okay. Do any of you disagree with giving state and local law enforcement the authority to fight back?
Again, within constitutional limits.
Okay. Tell me what your constitutional concerns are, Professor.
So I have three primary concerns. The first has to do with the Fourth Amendment and the conditions under which a warrant is required and a general warrant is forbidden by the Fourth Amendment. So in this particular case, it's important...
Professor, before you give me one of your lectures, are you saying that we should require state and local law enforcement to get a warrant before they fight back?
It depends on the condition. So in an exigent circumstance or something along the border...
I'm aware of the exceptions to the warrant requirement. But you, generally speaking, you want to require them to get a warrant.
Only for the search of a device or the seizure of property. There are also due process implications of that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You started to mention another one of your objections.
First Amendment.
First Amendment. Okay. Any others?
Yeah, I also have a state rights, a 10th Amendment concern here, which is that states own the airspace adjacent to the land within their state that's not federally owned, and the current federal provisions don't recognize state sovereignty in that way.
So you want to give state and local law enforcement the authority to fight back, but you want to list a whole lot of conditions. Is that a fair assessment?
Not a whole lot, but some. There needs to be a nexus to the facility. It can't be any drone anywhere in America if you're concerned about a particular facility, but right now it's too broad. There have to be acknowledgments of First Amendment concerns. So for instance, limiting the covered facilities to the experience and logic test with which the courts use for right of public access, or prohibiting media bans across the board, or setting a time limit before and after special events so they don't extend extensively. This is what a number of state measures already do, and I'd like to see that at a federal level and apply to bring this within the constitutional
Sounds
limits.
like a lot of conditions to me.
No, not very many. As long as there's probable cause and the conditions are met, then absolutely you can.
Have you ever heard of a legislative practice called loving a bill to death?
Yes.
Okay. And that's when you take a bill and somebody says, I'm really for this bill. But then they add so many amendments and they screw it up so badly that the bill either becomes ineffective or doesn't pass. Is that a pretty accurate description?
Of the term?
Yeah.
Yes.
You're trying to love this to death, aren't you?
I disagree.
You're not really for giving law enforcement the power to fight back, are you?
I am in favor of giving law enforcement that power and respecting constitutional limits.
I don't believe you, Professor. Okay? You're not talking to Bambi's baby brother here. Okay? I've read some of your stuff. I think you'd be more intellectually honest if you just come out and say, I'm on the side of the bad guys here. I think we shouldn't give state and local law enforcement the authority to fight back. You're trying to make it as hard as possible, aren't you?
We'll have to disagree on that point, Senator.
Nah. You know, you ever heard the expression, watch what they do, not what they say? I've watched what you've done. I know what you believe. Well, you're on the FISA court?
I'm not on the court. No, I'm an amicus for the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court and the Court of Review.
Okay. Were you there when you guys issued all those bad warrants against Trump's people?
I can't discuss my work on the court, unfortunately.
Oh, it's top secret, right? You'd have to put me on the American people on double secret probation if you told them the truth, wouldn't you?
No. I can't discuss my matters that I've handled before the court. I can discuss the public ones where I've dealt with First Amendment concerns and the right to petition. I did an extensive history looking at that right
I'm done,
to petition.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Kennedy. We're going to turn it over to Senator Blumenthal.
Thanks, Madam Chair.
Would any of you advise a client to defy a federal court order?
No.
None of you would? How about you, Professor?
I mean, under most circumstances, we follow the government and private parties follow court orders. I suppose I would not rule out ever the possibility that in a sufficiently egregious order, there should be some consideration of whether there's a way.
So in some cases,
I think it's a qualified answer, yes.
In some cases you would.
In an extremely narrow band of cases, I think it would be considered, yes.
Okay. Do any of you think that nationwide or universal injunctions are not being abused?
I'm not sure what if I may, Senator, I'm not sure what the time horizon of the question is. I don't think that there could be good faith disagreements about the correctness of some of them, but I have not seen in the last 4 months abuse. No.
I've read your stuff and I've read your writings. I don't want to get bogged down with this, but I have little respect for your opinion because I've read your stuff. When someone is in the White House that you agree with and someone gets a universal injunction against him, you don't like universal injunctions. You called them judges acting like they're politicians in robes and judges looking like crass political actors. But now that President Trump's in the White House, who you dislike, you think that universal injunctions taste like pumpkin pie. So I have to discount what you say because I think you act on your political beliefs. And I worry that that's what you're teaching your kids. So I'll leave you out of that. Do you think nationwide injunctions are being abused?
Certainly, Senator. I think that is.
They're being abused by both sides, aren't they?
Yes, Senator.
Both Republicans and Democrats are forum shopping, aren't they?
Certainly.
Professor, do you disagree with that?
I think both sides are abusing them. I agree.
Okay. Both sides.
Yeah.
There are no clean hands here. Now, your suggestion is that when a federal judge issues a nationwide injunction, there should be an automatic stay and an expedited right of appeal. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Do you disagree with that?
I haven't given enough thought to have a position on it, Senator.
I suspect, Professor, your answer will be it depends on who's president.
No, Senator.
Let me ask you about this. What if we had a rule? I was reading an article the other day. I'm not suggesting it. I just want your opinions. That said, if a president, any president, issues an executive order, let's say, that clearly violates settled Supreme Court precedent, that a federal judge can't issue a nationwide injunction. For example, if a federal a president issued an order that said no one in America has right to counsel any longer, including but not limited to, in a felony case, having the government pay for your lawyer if you can't afford it. That clearly violates settled Gideon v. Wainwright. In that case, a judge has no authority or does have authority to issue a nationwide injunction. But in a case where the law is unclear, a judge should refrain from that. Now, obviously, we'd have to trust our judges, but we're supposed to be able to trust them anyway. What do you think about that?
I don't agree with that, Senator, because I think universal injunctions transgress the limitations under Article 3, even if the underlying merits are clear.
I happen to agree with you. I don't think there's any basis under Article 3, under Supreme Court precedent, under the English common law for nationwide injunctions. I think politicians have helped judges, and many judges are politicians, to just make it up. And many of them are like Professor Shaw here. If they like the president, they're against nationwide injunctions. If they don't like the president, they're for him. Professor, let me ask you this while I have you. On April 22nd, 2024, you said there are some members of the Supreme Court that are evil. Which justices were you talking about?
I'll take it your word, Senator. I don't recall using that word, but.
All right, here's what you said. You were talking about the majority opinion in Muldrow v. City of St. Louis. You said, quote, Justice Kagan, will she be able to control the opinion's future distortion by her evil colleagues? Probably not, end quote. Who were you talking about?
Sir, I'm very skeptical. If it's a transcription, it was probably a transcription error. I do not think I said.
No, you said it. Why don't you own up to it? Which you call some of the members of the Supreme Court evil. Now, which ones do you think are evil?
I would have to refresh my recollection. I've been very critical of some members of the Supreme Court.
You made that statement, aren't you?
I'm
You're an officer
Senator, it doesn't sound like something that I would say.
You know what I'm embarrassed at? That you're teaching our kids.
I don't refer to Supreme Court justices as evil in
the
classroom,
on
sir.
Your podcast, April 22nd, 2024.
Okay, well,
big as Dallas. And you're an officer of the court, and you're here advising us to be respectful to federal judges, and you say they're evil members of the United States Supreme Court? Gag me with a spoon. You're part of what's the problem in all of this.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy. Senator Durbin.
So I'm going to give the panel members an opportunity to.
I've got a few questions, gentlemen. Let me start with you, Mr. Secretary. I'm trying to understand how you and all of you in OMB are thinking here. Where does the money come from for the Inland Waterways Trust Fund?
Senator, it's principally raised by a tax on the diesel fuel used in the tug and barge industry.
Yeah. Do you know the balance in that account off the top of your head?
I don't know off the top of my head. I'll be happy to provide that to you for the record.
Okay.
Exactly, but it is not insignificant.
I'm sorry?
The balance is not insignificant.
Okay. The proposed budget proposes not to spend it. Why would we? It can't be used for anything else. Why would we not spend it?
Sir, well, first of all, most of the needs that with and I'm going to kind of back up with the Corps' capabilities. Most of the needs that we were currently capable of using that trust fund for were moved forward into the 25 spending plan. So a lot of that were taken care. A lot of those projects were funded in 25 pretty close to their full capabilities in the interim future. And it also, the advantage of the trust funds is that they're designed to be for monies to be raised to used, including out years, and over a longer period of time. So, we moved the funds forward into 25 for most of the projects that were currently ongoing, and then the projects, there were balances left that will be used in future years to fund projects as they come up and the Corps' capability come available.
So, Mr. Secretary, you're saying you don't need the money right now?
No, sir, we're going to need the money very soon.
I'm talking about right now. It's a timing issue?
I would say largely, sir, yes. That could we always use some, what we don't want to do is get into a situation where we're trying to spend money just because it's about to expire.
Agreed.
We'd rather find that, fund it as the projects need it as they go forward.
Where's the money come from for the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund?
Sir, it's a value-based user fee that is charged against all cargoes entering or exiting the United States.
Okay. It's got some money in it, doesn't it?
It does. And again, to be used over time.
Right. This proposed budget only proposes using $1.7 billion. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
That's below the mark that we set, is it not?
Yes, sir.
How come?
Again, more of a timing issue. Some things were moved forward. Others, the president did put a focus on what were principal federal responsibilities, which is the maintenance and dredging of federal channels. And so, again, the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund is to be used over time for those projects.
Okay. Well, nobody's thinking about using this money for something else, are they?
No, sir.
Okay. General, I want to ask you a question about bringing these projects in on budget and on time. I know you said it was engineering. We got to get the engineering right, project management right, team right. Let me give you an example. I'm not going to beat this to death, but and I'm just picking a project. We've got a lot of projects in Louisiana, just like Alaska has a lot of projects. Everybody has a lot of projects. But the Inland Harbor Navigation Canal in New Orleans. 10 years ago, we projected it would cost about $951 million. Now the cost is up to about $4.7 billion. And the Corps says it will take 14 years. I mean, I understand inflation, but why? And I'm using this as an example.
So Senator, the Inner Harbor Navigation Canal down there, where the intercoastal waterway bisects and gets across and up onto the Mississippi River is absolutely key. And you know the history that we've had on multiple lawsuits and injunctions over the years. A lot of it built from the lack of trust from the local communities, particularly the lower Ninth Ward.
I know.
So that cost estimate, and for everybody listening, that IHNC is also part of the flood protection for the greater New Orleans area, the river-facing gates. So it's imperative that we get this right. And what I told the district to do is to make sure that they have put in their cost estimates the risks associated. Most of those risks are most of those risks are elements of not having local support to build this. We want to get a team together.
How do you quantify that?
So that's what we owe you. You take a risk that it's going to get delayed, and then you try your best to put money associated with that would get delayed. So we would have loved to have built this thing for less than $1 billion 10 years ago, but the court cases have prevented us from doing that. The lack of trust from the citizens of the lower Ninth Ward have prevented us from doing that. So we're trying to build that trust so that we don't end up in this infinite loop of litigation.
I got it. All right, Senator Murkowski's here. I want to ask you one more question. And you're well aware of all this. For whatever reason, sea levels are rising. Our land in South Louisiana is sinking. Part of that is because over time, sediment becomes more and more compacted. Where did that sediment come from? That sediment came from the Mississippi River, which used to overflow, which was a blessing and a curse. But our Corps did an extraordinary job at our request of levying the Mississippi River. We weighed the cost and the benefit and said the right thing to do here is to levy the river. Well, that obviously stopped the sediment. Okay? And I'm not suggesting we take the levees down, by the way. What do we do? We're not going to take the levees down. The land's sinking. There's no new sediment coming in. The sediment's becoming more compacted, and the sea levels are rising. What would you do if you were king for a day? General, let me start with you, and then I'll ask the secretary.
Sure. Chairman Kennedy, so some of the projects are that we have a tremendous amount of non-structural projects going on in South Louisiana.
And I'm not asking you to comment on any particular project. I get all the politics and the wailing and the national gnashing of teeth, and everybody's bowels are in an uproar over which one's the best one. I get that. I'm just asking you, what approach should we take?
So raising homes to deal with sea level rise coming up and the land sinking, that non-structural approach is a tool that we're starting to execute at scale in southern Louisiana. What we're also taking a look at is supporting the state of Louisiana in whatever settlement diversion paths that it's choosing to take. We had, they had applied for a permit and
Do you think
granted it.
settlement diversion works?
In some instances, I believe it does. It has to be done very carefully. And anytime we move the Mississippi River off from where it's going to someplace else, that's going to have tremendous forces. And so we have to take a look at that mindfully. But I believe we have the engineering expertise, and working in conjunction with the state, I believe that we can use that tool effectively.
Now, do you, on this sediment diversion, are you saying we should do it in small amounts?
Pilot projects.
Larger amounts, or does that matter?
I think pilot projects to prove that we know what we think we know are always wise.
So you're thinking of a pilot project?
I think those.
We've done some.
We have done some.
We don't have enough pilots?
I'd owe you a better, more detailed answer on that.
Okay. What do you think, Mr. Secretary?
Senator, I certainly agree that the Corps' expertise in moving and doing sediment projects and doing a traditional Corps approach will be one of the tools that has to happen. I think we need to think about the other side of some of the stuff the Corps does, and that's using the regulatory program to create some incentives for the private sector to do positive things.
For example?
I'll use a perfect example in South Louisiana. Right now, in the 404 program, we cannot give a mitigation bank credit for preventing subsidence losses of wetlands. Those coastal wetlands losses are amounting to about the only losses nationally in wetlands resources. But we don't have a mechanism now between, I don't think it's law, it's really regulation, that would allow someone, for example, there are several large landowners down there that at a relatively low cost, a few $1 million, could, barrier the breaches that have been into the coastal wetlands for a long time, and that would stop some of the saltwater incursion, which accelerates the wetlands losses and some of the subsidence. But if they could sell credits for 404 purposes for elsewhere in Louisiana, that would provide the economic incentive for doing that. But we can do it, so now you've got people in South Louisiana going up to North Louisiana to buy credits, to do development.
Gotcha.
There's a mismatch. We need to find some more creative ways to use the regulatory system in a positive manner to help.
Okay. I want to sit down. We'll sit down and talk about that.
Absolutely, Senator.
Thank you for your creative thinking. I want to be sure I understand you, General. You think diversion works?
I believe there's cases where it can be part of the solution. Yes.
You think it can work in South Louisiana?
Yes.
Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, I want to try to separate policy and politics for a second. I know it's hard to do around this place, but I thought Senator Cornyn made a very good point in his opening remarks. I think Senator Schmidt made the same point that the policy here is very important. And I want to ask you your opinion on the policy. Professor, tell me briefly, I know you came to talk about auto pens, but tell me briefly about the 25th Amendment.
Well, Senator, the 25th Amendment provides the process by which to implement a principle that's in the original Constitution, which is when the president's unable to exercise the powers and duties of the presidency, somebody else exercises them, starting with the vice president. The 25th Amendment sets up a process by which, if there's a question whether the president is able to do that, the vice president and the heads of the executive departments can temporarily basically put the vice president in as acting president, and then Congress ultimately decides the question.
Well, the standard, is it not, Professor? The standard is disability of the president. Is that correct?
Unable to exercise the powers and duties.
Okay.
Yes.
Here's what I would like your opinion on, and the opinion of these two gentlemen here. You have all been staffers. You've worked in government. You've had a boss. In Mr. Spicer's case, his boss was the President of the United States. Let's suppose the President, you were using your experience as a staffer. You were working for the President, any President. Hypothetically a President. And let's suppose the President started talking like he was from outer space. Let's suppose the President became fatigued very easily. He couldn't finish a sentence without taking a nap. Let's suppose the President, he was just physically in bad shape, mentally and physically. Mentally, he may or may not have, you're not a doctor, neurodegenerative disease, but physically you can see you could bake a Thanksgiving turkey in the time it takes him to walk across the stage. What is, do you think, as a member of his staff, what do you think is your moral obligation to say, wait a minute, the president can't do the job anymore? I know you're loyal folks. You believe in your president, this president, whichever president. I'm speaking hypothetically. You're loyal. You want to be a good staffer, but you also have a moral obligation. How do you reach that decision, Professor? And I'll go to each of you.
Senator, I think the first thing you would have to do in a situation like that is exercise your own judgment. How serious is this problem? Because everybody has moments when they lose focus, it happens. But if somebody thinks this is a really serious problem, I think the first thing to do is the most difficult, which is to say to the president, because the 25th Amendment also provides that the president can say, I'm unable to exercise the powers and duties of my office.
And suppose the president
That would be extremely
says,
difficult, but I think it should be done.
Look, trust me, I can. And it's clear to you that he has neurodegenerative disease and he can't. What do? Do you have a moral obligation as a staff member to go to the American people and say, we've got a problem here, it may cost me my career?
Senator, I think at that point you have an obligation to talk to the vice president, who is in charge of the Section 4 process under the 25th Amendment.
What about you, Mr. Wald? Do you have a moral obligation? I understand you want it to go away, you want to work it out with him, but you can't. When does a staffer have a moral obligation to stand up and say he can't be president anymore, she can't be?
Well, Senator, the 25th Amendment only works if individual staffers or officers of the United States exercise that kind of moral judgment.
That's what I'm asking you.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think always, as the professor said, I mean, the presidency is an enormous burden, so it would be not one instance, it would have to be several instances of a failure to exercise judgment.
How do you make that decision? You're the staffer, I get it.
Yeah, well, I think it begins with prayer, of course, but after that, I think it's conversation with other staffers, and if you're unable to confront the president or to raise the issue with the vice president, you should resign.
What about you, Mr. Spicer? Do you stand up and do it and tell the truth and run, or do you have a greater obligation to your boss?
Well, luckily I didn't have that problem, but I would say that you have a moral obligation as an American, as a citizen, as a human being. If the leader of the free world cannot conduct themselves to make the decisions that are critical to this country and to the world, you absolutely have a moral obligation to follow the chain of command, and if they don't act, then you must.
Do either of you gentlemen disagree with that? Professor?
Senator, I think acting means talking to the people who have the responsibility or in a position under the Constitution to do something.
You don't
with the
agree with
situation.
Mr. Spicer?
Senator, I'm not sure exactly what he has in mind, other than talking to the people who can make the decision.
I'm just trying to ask. You've all been staffers. Suppose you go to everybody you're supposed to go to, and they all say, "My advice to you is to shut up." Do you have a moral obligation as a staffer to say, "Look, this person can't be president of the United States. It isn't policy. He physically can't do it."
Senator Kennedy, it's not a question of whether a staffer has that obligation. It's whether you as an American have that obligation, and I think each and every one of us does.
Yeah, but you can see it. An American can't. Professor, what do you think?
Senator, I think there are situations under which someone in that position should speak publicly, but I also think that the views of a single individual who is not the person who is constitutionally responsible for taking measures should be considered by the public as just the views of of one individual who has some information about the subject.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Tillis.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am. Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've listened with great interest today, and here's what I hear you saying. The four folks to my left, I hear you saying that digital assets are different. Digital assets hold great promise. Digital assets need special rules. I agree with that. The obvious question is, what should those rules be, and to what extent should we allow you to draft them? I've also heard some of you say that digital assets represent the next generation of the internet. Well, we let the current generation of the internet draft their own rules, and frankly, it looks like what we got as a result looks like somebody knocked over a urine sample. Congress can't even agree on basic legislation dealing with privacy on the internet. How the hell are we going to tackle this? But I hear what you're saying. I hear Mr. Painter, as usual, if you follow him on social media, you know, all politicians are crooks. Very helpful. I want to direct most of my questions to Professor Massad. Is that how you say your name?
Massad.
Mr. Massad. I'm really worried we're going to get this wrong. We don't know, we in Congress and our staffs don't know as much as the professionals in digital assets know. And I don't see how we can possibly catch up. Tell me more about your idea of having the SEC. Well, first, I don't want to run out of time here, but why is the digital assets industry so scared of being regulated by the SEC?
Well, I think we need to step back, Senator.
Briefly, please.
They don't want everything treated as a security because they don't want that entire framework to apply, but that's also because the SEC did fail to try to customize its rules to adapt for this technology, and it should do that. And you've got leadership at the agencies now who are working on those things.
You're suggesting that we turn to two of our agencies, one of which is the SEC, and say, you have expertise. Before we take a crack at a bill, you come up with a bill with rules, with regulations. Tell us how to do this. Because I hear you saying in some cases digital assets are commodities, in some cases they're securities.
Congress needs to fill the gap, which is if it's not a security, who's going to create a regulatory framework for it? So you do need to fill that. But these questions about exactly which is when is it a security, when is it not a security, how do we customize the rules, what should we do about DeFi, a lot of that should really be left to the agencies. You could establish some principles, but I wouldn't write detailed rules.
Have you looked, Professor, at Congressman Hill's legislation?
I have in detail.
What do you think?
I think it's got a lot of problems. I think it's 236 pages of regulatory arbitrage opportunities for creative lawyers, and I used to be one that did that kind of stuff.
Made a lot of money, did you?
I did, but...
Yeah. Mr. Painter, do you think Senator Gillibrand is a crook?
No, and I do not think all politicians are crooks.
And why did you call her a crook?
I did not call her a crook. Now, Senator, you need to focus on this bill. Right, you're doing this again. You did it the last hearing. You need to read the bill.
Role in stablecoin regulation, $217,000 in crypto donations. You tweeted that.
Yes, I do.
And then you said, the crypto industry is buying Congress and the White House. This won't end well. Why do you think the crypto industry is buying Senator Gillibrand?
I said, look at the campaign contributions from this industry.
You think they've bought her?
No, I said, look at the campaign contributions.
You said they bought her. Do you think they bought her?
Senator, you need to focus on this bill instead of trying to distort my Twitter.
Last time, one of my
you were quoting
a crook,
what a Marxist in Chicago said about
her. And what evidence do you have that she's a crook?
I said there is massive amount of campaign contributions coming into this Congress from the crypto industry.
Do you want to apologize to Senator Gillibrand?
I do not want you to have to apologize for passing legislation
Do you want to
that
apologize
destroys
to
our
Senator
economy.
Gillibrand for calling
You are distorting
crook?
what I said, just like you did in the last hearing. You're wasting everybody's time, Senator.
You're a whack job.
Senator,
you are a
wasting.
well,
I think we are
next level whack job.
I think we
Is
are.
this middle school, Senator?
Senators and witness, thank you both.
I think
for
you
your
should apologize, Senator.
I think,
Gillibrand.
Senator, you're wasting our time. This is not middle school.
Thank you for your participation. I will say that Senator Smith is next. The floor is yours.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So, not so long ago,
Just in case someone's wondering, we did invite the big banks to be here today.
Where are they?
I don't see them. Senator Kennedy.
Mr. Rice, you think we ought to raise the deposit limit to 20 million, right?
And that's for payroll accounts, sir. Yes.
And Mr. Harrison, you agree with that?
I think that'd be helpful, yes, Senator.
Mr. Kelly, how about you?
The recommendations we put forth, Senator Kennedy.
Just give me a number if you would.
I don't have a number. Our recommendation is it needs to be studied and empirically based.
Okay. Mr. Podsiadly?
Yes. Yeah, thank you, sir.
My colleagues are impressed that I can pronounce
I'm very well done.
I'm kind of impressed myself.
I used to get a lot of starts with a P going in my undergraduate and high school.
All right. I'll call you Scooter. How?
I'll take that as
Give me a number.
I would agree with Mr. Kelly that it needs to be empirically based, and that
Come on, guys. I know it ought to be empirically based.
Okay, well, I'll say this. The one concern that I do
work
have,
at FDIC. Give me a number.
Yeah, well, the one concern I have is some institution loading up on a significant number of $20 million deposits that then ultimately.
So if you don't like 20, give me a number.
I don't have one off the
You're
top.
not going to give me a number.
I will give you my best guess, which is that 250 is not high enough, and 20 million is probably too high.
How much?
I said 20 million is probably too high.
Okay.
Because I worry about.
Let's suppose we go to 20 million.
Yeah.
Banks are going to pay this through assessments, right?
Yes, correct. Risk-based.
Okay. Mr. Kelly, who's going to push back among the banking community?
Senator Kennedy, I'm not sure who will push back on that.
All right, Mr. Harrison.
I think there's some smaller banks that will feel they don't need it. Their deposit accounts aren't that large, and they would be, not as willing to do that. I think some of the banks that currently have coverage for free will likely push back.
Some of the what?
Some
larger
of the banks that have implicit coverage
Some of the larger
for
banks?
free. Generally, the larger.
Some of the larger banks?
That is correct.
So you think the larger banks will oppose it?
I don't think they'll support it. I don't know if they will oppose it.
How about you, Scooter?
I love the new nickname. I will take that as a warm regard. But
it is.
I would say that my bigger concern is the aggregation of deposits.
Who's going to push back?
I don't know that you would have any institution that would push back other than as
everybody be happy.
Well, it depends on what the cost is, right?
Mr. Rice, who's going to push back?
Not our 144 million members, sir. They'd be delighted that their paychecks are guaranteed.
Who's going to push back, though?
The bankers, sir, the large banks.
The large banks.
They're not here today, and I think their silence is implicit on their stand on this.
Okay. So here's what I hear you saying. 20 million indexed to inflation, but the large banks are not going to like it because they have an implicit guarantee. Does anybody disagree with that? Does anybody disagree? I certainly don't with Senator Warren's assessment that the big banks don't have to worry about it because they're going to be bailed out. Somebody disagree with that? Okay.
Well, let me add a little color, Senator. I think perspective. So I led a committee. And
I'm sorry, sir?
I led a committee that included banks of all sizes.
Right.
And one of the things I learned in leading that committee is that there is a lot of complexity associated with the prudential regulatory aspect of those larger institutions. Their liquidity requirements are very different than mine at $700 million a year. And so it's something that I had to become sensitive to as a leader of that group. And so while we sit here...
Kelly, let me stop you. I understand. You're a smart man and you're a successful man.
Well, I appreciate the compliment.
And I appreciate that. But you're telling me here today, all of you, we've got a problem. And
correct.
We're not going to... this isn't directed toward you, sir. But we're not going to solve this problem by pondering our navels. We're going to have to come up with a number and index it to inflation. Taxpayers won't pay, the banks will pay. And then find out who's going to push back and why. I mean, that's the challenge. I understand the difficulty and the nuances and the trade-offs. I get all that.
Thank you.
And you make, I don't mean to denigrate your analysis, because you know a lot more about this than I do. But you're saying we have a problem. I'm asking how we solve it. And what I'm hearing is $20 million, index it to inflation. The larger bank's going to raise fresh hell.
Fresh.